I'm a first gen, and I think it took a very long time to kind of accept that and even understand what that meant. And I'm more and more understanding of like what that title holds, and it holds a lot of power, but also a lot of responsibility and a lot of struggles and pain.
Hola FirstGen. I hope that you are doing okay from wherever you find yourself in life, in your journey, in the world today. I am so excited to bring you guys this episode. Me peiné, me arreglé, me bañé, me perfumé, everything, because this episode was made with so much love, so much ganas, and it's essentially a combination of all of the episodes that we've had so far this year. I'll share a little bit of like behind the scenes stories and just give you a deeper insight into it all. So I really hope that you give this episode a listen. As I've been working on it, I've honestly been getting emotional, and I just think that I see so much power in combining all of these stories and putting them together in this way. So I hope that you find it special as well. I want to start off by saying how thankful I am for the variety of conversations that we have had on the podcast, the things that we have talked about, and of course, the level of vulnerability that the guests that have come on have been willing to share, because they've really given us a peek into not only their story, but truly the hard parts of their journeys. And I think that it's really important to give the hard parts a voice. When I started my healing and awakening journey over 5 years ago, I found myself feeling different than those around me, thinking different than those around me, and just thought others around me wouldn't understand. And so where I found community was online, was through people that I saw that were also on a healing or awakening journey. And none of those people that I watched or tuned into shared my cultura or even the first gen experience. And that's why so far, all of the guests that I've had on the podcast not only share our cultura, but they also share the first gen experience. And you may have noticed that the majority of the guests so far have their own social media platforms and are shining their light and putting their gifts out into the world. And so it was really important for me that as part of the episodes, we shared with you guys the parts that you don't see on social media, the hard parts, so that you don't feel alone and that you can get examples of people who went through journeys that maybe are similar to yours, but also that empowered and validated their own experiences by continuing on the journey. And hopefully it inspires you to do the same. And I also wanted us to do this because I wanted you to see that this light that we share or the way that we show up is usually darkness transformed.
For me, it started when I was really dealing with really bad anxiety. It was like debilitating to the point where I wouldn't step out of my house, and if I did, it would just it would just be to go to the store, and even then, like it would take me over 10 minutes to get out of the car. So a lot of the time, I just spend time at my house.
My family didn't know I was broken and all that, and my job didn't know that I was this sad little person inside because all I would give to the world was happiness and hard work.
Being raised by my grandma, and my mom was a single parent, my father was incarcerated. It's this very complex experience of I was in a scholarship in Catholic school, but on the weekends I was in the family housing units at the prison with my dad.
There was a lot of gaslighting, a lot of me starting to feel stir crazy, where I was like, no, like, am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. And I felt like I just lost my power and I lost my voice. I just felt so numb and so empty, and like I just felt like devastated and like I was in a hole.
I manifested my dream, right? And I was like, oh, I could do this. I could keep going. And then fall of 2021, all of my clients left. I remember being so down. I was like, I am a failure.
It took a lot in me to really fight the urge to call him, to fight the urge to go visit him, to, see him. But I just told myself, like, I love him so much, but when am I going to love myself more?
For me, it was like I was letting go of parts of Vidi that I had outgrown too. Essentially, we're outgrowing those parts of ourselves, and there's grief to that.
I went 33 years without asking for help in therapy or a psychiatrist. Just living through it. And it was exhausting and hard. Like, I know we share like lo dulce right now, but there was a lot of tears and confusion and brokenness and navigating through that to get to here.
Exactly, Jazz. There's so much that goes into healing and awakening journeys. And of course, in 1 hour, we can't capture everything that goes into the journey, but I hope that with each episode, you get bits and pieces of it. Healing and awakening, they're two journeys that can happen separately, but I've seen them happen and be closely intertwined. So I love asking the guests which one they resonate with most, if they resonate with healing or awakening. It's been such a gift to see every guest explain their interpretation of healing and awakening or their version of it. So I no longer have one image of what healing and awakening has to look like. We literally have the podcast to reference back and to see how each journey manifests within each of our lives.
Healing definitely calls my name the most. It started when I started my entrepreneurship journey. So when I started this business journey, I had no idea like the term of healing or a healing journey or any of that. I was not exposed to that whatsoever. And it was that year strongly. And even more every year after that, where I have learned so much about myself, of how much I need to heal. It's ongoing.
I think in order to get on a path of healing, you kind of need to have that awakening moment. You have to have that self-awareness. And I know for me, my healing journey, it's been a long journey, but I feel like I haven't really put in the work until I finally like woke up and was like, hey, I need to make changes. Like I can't just like keep floating through life.
It's a little bit of both, of an awakening, of starting to like ask my parents more questions, like how you were saying, like getting to know their story. So it's awakening, realizing why they act a certain way. But it also takes me down like the healing path of trying to get a little bit of separation and realize that, it's okay if you pull back a little bit.
I think we were already half the year during our lockdown. I noticed a lot of body pain in society. A lot of our physical systems, when they start to kind of not work as well, or there's a medical condition, right? That's when we start getting concerned. But we never go within and really ask ourselves, like, with regards to our mental health. So for me, my awakening is my body started talking to me.
Once I started my weight loss journey, that's when I started focusing more on my mental health, the emotions that I was feeling, all the feelings that the unknown just kind of not really processed or understood. Yeah. So heavy on the healing.
I told myself, well, all of my accomplishments are gonna be for my family or for my friends or everyone but me. That was kind of creating a big hole like in my heart and like in my own goals, because being first generation, graduating college, like that was one of the biggest accomplishments that I could have ever done for me. But it's crazy how like there was a time when I came to realize I wasn't happy with what I was doing. My mom was, like my siblings were, like my entire family, and I was like, dang.
Listening back to those interpretations of healing and awakening is so beautiful to me because they are always still so closely tied to the first gen experience, of course, because they're being told by fellow first gens, right? And speaking on the first gen experience, there is always these two other types of stories that happen underneath that or behind that. And that's the journey of being documented or undocumented in this country. And it's a simple difference. If you kind of zoom out and you're in your awakening thoughts, you realize like it's just a matter of where you're born. These simple differences just make such a huge difference in the type of life that someone lives, in their story, and what they go through. And so, although I don't personally share the undocumented journey, or that's not a part of my story, it has always been a part of my family story, including, of course, my parents. At one point, they were undocumented, and so are and were a lot of my family members. And so it was important for me that if I set out to do this podcast, that I be intentional about sharing both.
Came over here when I was 3. I was born in Monterrey, Mexico. We came over here on a visitor visa, and the way we would do it is like, we'd live over here, and every summer we'd go back to renew the visitor visa, and then one of the times we got caught. And so then that was like transition to becoming undocumented. And I think I was like 9-ish. But I do remember how we crossed, and because it's the summer, the water is lower. But I remember having to be carried by one of the señores, and then some other señor carried my sister, and we put like some clothes in like a trash bag. And then I remember we were like hiding or something, and they were watching the puente for the officers, the immigration officers. And then I remember like it was like go, 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 and then we had like to be carried across the river.
I actually remember the entire journey from leaving my grandparents' house to crossing through the desert and arriving to the US for the first time, and what my first English word was that I learned, which was quarter.
My God, you guys, when I listen to these stories, for example, here we had Violeta and Chris share their beginning or how they ended up in this country. I can't imagine having those memories and having not only the memories, of course, but having gone through that and the gamble that is for families to come here, the sacrifices that are made, the shock that it must be, it's surreal sometimes, honestly, to hear the things that people have to go through. It makes me emotional and it makes me angry because in the grand scheme of things, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too into it in this episode, but it's just so frustrating to me. I don't know if you guys have heard songs like there's one by Ricardo Arjona where he speaks about, I don't need a license or documentation. My documentation is I'm from Earth, something like that. And it's like, I'm not from another planet, so I shouldn't need documentation. And it's like, exactly. I think that whether we share the undocumented story or not, as first gens, we do share the experience of getting to know this country alongside our parents. Many of our childhoods were cut short, not because we stopped being kids, but because as kids, we had an awareness and a sense of responsibility that most kids don't have.
He said how many you have to pay for it.
It's free.
This video was super sweet, but did you notice who the adults were looking at in this video? First gens, a lot of us share this experience. As young kids, we were the ones that adults were looking to when there was interactions. And thankfully, this one was a positive interaction, but there were times where we were stopped by a car, right? And we were the translators between our parents and the officers, or doctor's appointments, or things of that nature. Being needed this way as a kid impacted how you existed in the world then, and it may still be impacting how you move in this world now. When I saw this little boy translate on video, it's something that I think I had never thought about, where I had never seen the first gen experience reflected on video back to me. It brought back so many memories of translating, and I think it did for a lot of other people as well, because this video that I posted got about 300K views and so many comments of you guys letting me know like your memories of translating. Some remembered it like as a fond memory, some not so much, but regardless, a lot of us shared this experience. Most of us can agree that when we start our healing and awakening journeys, none of us have like this roadmap or a checklist of like, here are the things that I need to address, the memories that I need to bring back up, right? And depending on how you're managing your journey, it may be managed alongside a therapist or a coach, or maybe something that you're doing on your own. But either way, I think a lot of us throughout our journey end up coming back to our childhoods, coming back to our memories. And the reason is that a lot of us didn't know, but how we feel as children and the roles that we take on can impact how we are as adults, can become our personality, can turn into the way that we cope with or without realizing it. Many of us end up doing some inner niña work.
There were these different complex experiences in my childhood that made me feel scared in a lot of ways and small.
The little girl in me was just craving for her mom to hug her every now and then, just say, I love you.
As a kid, like it's really hard to understand like why do I feel like unwanted? You know, why do I feel unwanted? It's like, of course, I'm with parents who had me as kids.
To just be gentle with myself, because a lot of the time I was very hard on myself, and I'm like, what would my child self like feel if I said those things to, you know,
Yeah.
growing up being bullied? It's like I'm bullying myself.
It's so crazy, right? How we can end up traumatizing ourselves or being our own bullies. There are voices that we carry through. There are stories that we tell ourselves, narratives, as they call them, right? That we play in our heads over and over again. And they impact how we see the world, how we see our day to day, our jobs, our friendships, etc. And it's super interesting to just dip your toe into inner child work because it can give you so much insight into why some people end up being the way that they are or doing the things that they do. And something that I want to mention is that even this makes me so proud that when I set out to do the podcast, it's not like I knew, oh, there's a bunch of Latinos out there going on healing and awakening journeys. It stemmed from a desire to find those few that I thought were going on their journeys and to talk to them and to highlight their stories and to have a podcast that you can listen to where you can listen to all different types of stories, right? And it's so cool how it's coming to light. But what's even cooler for me is in the intro of the podcast, when I hadn't talked to anyone, when I hadn't recorded any episodes yet, I remember saying something along the lines of, we grow up with letting our parents' stories overshadow ours. You know, a lot of us grow up hearing that story of you need to be grateful for what you have, ser agradecido, because you know you have more than we ever had, or you have a good life, or you don't need anything, no te falta nada. And so what happens with us is then we negate our own experiences, we negate our own emotions, we maybe feel emptiness in certain aspects of our life, and yet we're constantly told we have it all. And so then we kind of gaslight ourselves into thinking we're the problem. And it makes me so proud to have found a group of so many individuals that empowered themselves to realize beyond what we were being told. But I think that because that is a story that is so ingrained within us that we need to be grateful for what we have, it takes us a longer time to empower that little voice within us that is saying something is missing or something is wrong. That is why I think that for many of us, healing and awakening manifest a lot later in life for us. In addition to that, many of us are sprinting in life right alongside our parents in survival mode. As we maybe reach financial security, or our parents do, we just start to reach different phases of our lives. Then we get that pause to kind of look back, because when you're in the midst of a race, you're not looking back, you're running, you're sprinting, heading towards the goal. And as you start to reach goals, that's when you start to maybe look back. Maybe to look back at like, wow, where did I come from? But it then also sheds light on, what did I go through? What are the things that I had to do, right, to get to this point in my life? Now, although many of us then come into healing and awakening and start navigating our own story, our own journey, usually our story is super intertwined with that of our parents. And so as much as we want to maybe focus on our story, it usually is heavily intertwined with that of our family members. And the beautiful and maybe hard part about being a first gen, or at least from my point of view and what I see, is that we want to bring along everyone with us. And so as we start to understand ourselves better and crave knowing ourselves even more, we also do the same for our family members. Whether we're trying to bring healing and awakening or therapy to our family, there's also like this desire to understand them. And with that comes learning about our stories now as adults, going back and maybe asking or understanding, where did my parents come from? Where did my parents' parents come from? What is the story? Why are these generational traumas within our lives? As we crave knowing ourselves better, understanding ourselves better, we also do that for our families.
It's like navigating my dad with his stuff because he has his own trauma, and then my mom too, making sure that she doesn't feel attacked, so that way she can be receptive to what I'm telling her. And then with my sister too, like having to tell her like, yeah, there was some stuff going on, you just didn't notice.
My dad dropped out of school when he was in middle school, and then he crossed the border here, and then he would go back. In the day it was easier, right? So he would go back and forth between the States and El Salvador. And then eventually my mom came, and like even when she tells me the story of her crossing the border, like she like cries, you know, because it was very traumatizing for her.
My grandma, she came here pretty young. She only had 2 kids at the time when she came, and then she had 10 more when she was here. So my mom is somewhere in the middle of those 12 kids.
After I had my baby, I was at his doctor's appointment with him for his little checkup. And I just remember from one moment when he was in my belly, I just was like, I love you so much. I would sing to him, but I was always scared of how much I loved him. I felt like I was overwhelming him. And there was this moment at the doctor, and I was giving him little kisses, and I was embarrassed. I said to the nurse, I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I must be like stressing him out with all these little kisses. She looked at me and she was like, that's not possible. I'm crying. She said, that's not possible. You're his mom. And I thought, I've never known that. My love has always felt overwhelming and too much for my family system. My mom didn't know how to hug and be cariñosa because she had to be so tough.
It allowed me to start working on myself. And by working on myself, it allowed me to start healing my relationships with my parents, with my siblings. The more things came up, the more I worked on them, the more I was able to also share those type of experiences with my siblings, versus before, none of that conversation ever existed until I started my relationship journey. We really started talking about this, but before, none of that ever happened.
Claudia, you are so right. So many of us are the first in our families to bring up the topics of mental health, of generational trauma, of healing, and all of that good stuff. So if you're listening and you too are one of the first people in your family to bring these topics up or to come into awareness or consciousness of it all, can you leave a little hand emoji in the comment section so that we can see and support each other? Because it's not easy, guys. It's not easy at all. And while you're at it, por favor, if you're not subscribed to the podcast, please subscribe right now or follow it depending on the platform that you're listening on. It helps the algorithm know that it needs to share this with all of our fellow Latinos, Latinas, Latines. All right, so I want to take a little pause from the serious talk and the seriousness of it all and mention to you guys that when I created the podcast, I wanted it to reflect the two sides of me that I feel like I embody. There's a deep introspective, love having these deep conversations side of me. And then there's a more goofy, sense of humorous type side, childlike maybe side of me. But I recognized as I was doing these episodes that I couldn't necessarily infuse that into the episodes too much, because I feel like the stories that we bring on are so, so, so important. And so one way that I was like, let me just add a little of it in there is I ask every guest what their taco order is. And so if you ever want to buy any of the guests that we've had on so far tacos, here are their taco orders.
One molita, and then I want 2 tacos de carne asada.
3 tacos de asada with everything.
3 de asada y 3 de chorizo.
Tacos de carne asada or a burrito de carne asada?
How many tacos?
6.
2 del pastor, 2 de asada con todo.
2 de carnitas, 2 de adobada, y 2 de asada.
The next one is what's your taco order, but we can do what's your pupusa order?
Pupusa revuelta without loroco.
De lengua o de barbacoa? Probably 2 of each.
4 tacos de asada.
Yum, ya me dio hambre. So if you guys are wondering, by the way, what my taco order is, I've always been a 3 tacos de asada, la pura carne, and then I add salsa verde on the side, and if they have grilled chile and onions, then I'll take those too. All right, so back to being the first in your family to maybe bring up the topic or go to therapy, maybe heal or awaken, come into this consciousness, start to glitch, maybe if you're the glitch in the family, the more that you head into your journey, the more that you may feel disconnected from those around you. And that's especially when you're the one trying to break the cycles that they're still existing in. It's only natural for you to start to kind of feel like there's this distance being created, and they may feel it too, but they may not understand why they feel that distance, right? And that's, I think, part of what makes it all kind of difficult and so layered.
I feel like that was one of the reasons why I had to go to therapy, because I knew it almost like I had to draw a line in the sand. Like, either I repeat this cycle of what I was raised with,
Yeah.
or I change it. And that was hard.
Latinos that didn't grow up learning what like taking care of yourself was and how valuable your feelings are. I mean, I'm sure you've heard like Latino parents saying like, si lloras, te voy a pegar pa que te, like, en verdad llores, things like that. And you kind of grow up thinking like, damn, like I'm not allowed to be sad then or cry about anything because, you know,
Yeah.
and I want to break that.
He was teaching me that although I hit you and although I hurt you, I still love you. And I think I learned that
And you need to respect me.
Yeah, and then top it off, you talk back to me and you're disrespecting me. To me, it was always kind of like, okay, well, that's my dad, so he still loves me, you know. And I think in this relationship, he was the same exact way. I was in a relationship again, mirroring who my dad was.
And I keep calling it like I have a new rhythm of life, because my rhythm of life before was constantly on the go. My nervous system was on high alert. I was constantly being interrupted. It was crisis. And now my rhythm of life is so much slower. But going from that to this, like, that itself was a whole process.
It's hard because you have to kind of pick your battle. Like, do I want to pick me and build me, or like pick them and build us?
My God, Chris, yes. Sometimes it can totally feel like that. Like we have to choose between our journey or our sanity or our peace, and maintaining peace and unity within the family with the people that we love. Personally, on my journey and with through some of the clients that I have worked with, I think that there can be a midpoint where we can kind of meet in the middle and continue to build both relationships up. But I do think also that sometimes it does require moments of isolation, moments of separateness. You have to be okay for yourself first in order to reinsert yourself in the units that maybe traumatize you, or for you to understand your own inner poder, your inner voice, to learn what it sounds like, what it feels like, so that when you do find yourself once again back in those environments, you can lean on yourself, you can have your own back. That's what I think. You know, I think that at the bottom of it all, what can give you that strength and that like empowerment is self-love, self-trust, and working on that, building that. It's like a muscle, you know, and allowing yourself space to have that. One of the things that I'm super proud of with this podcast is that we've gotten the opportunity to have fellow Latina therapists on the podcast. And so I'm going to hand it over to Viridiana to give us a little tip on how to break cycles.
Who are those little voices that to some extent you've embraced? Ask yourself, is this really helping me? Like for my future and in the future that I want to create, or do I need to break that inner voice and break that cycle, right? First generations, we're cycle breakers, and we need to question, we need to speak up.
Yes. As first gens, we are cycle breakers. We are here for so many purposes. We're given, yes, a new opportunity. And with that opportunity, it goes beyond, I think, like going to college, getting a good job, getting a nice home. I think that we are given this opportunity of coming into knowing ourselves. And I think that sometimes our family members and our generational lines didn't have that opportunity to the degree that we have. And I've come to realize that our parents are cycle breakers too. In their own way, they broke out of cycles potentially, right? But I have seen, like, for example, reflected in my parents and other parents, there are things and cycles that we don't have to break because thankfully they did. And I want to give credit where credit is due, because I think as we come into the knowing of the things that we're having to navigate, the traumas that we're having to address, and the cycles that we're trying to break, there can be some resentment, I guess, towards them, towards the things that they didn't do. And I have been personally like working on a balance, a more healthy balance of recognizing there's also things that they did that now I don't have to do thanks to their work and their input. And maybe they didn't do it through the lens of healing and awakening, but that doesn't mean that they didn't put in work. Personally, I think that I gave them so much recognition for who they were and what they did for so long in my life that I kind of idolized them. And in order to heal myself, I had to take them off the pedestal that I put them on, at least for a little bit, so that I could heal myself, so that I could give myself a voice. Because whenever I like maybe stood next to them in terms of my story or my feelings, the conditioning that I received was that their story was so big, their sacrifices were so huge, that they definitely overshadowed how I felt, how I thought of myself or my emotions. And it kind of made me negate them, right? So in my own personal journey, and sometimes for others too, you may have to change the way that you view that a little bit to give and make room and space for your own story. Like if we had a square and we're all, the family unit is within the square, sometimes our parents' story like is so big that it takes up 90% of the room, and there's only 10% left for our own feelings, emotions, story, challenges, triumph. And so maybe when we bring up like this is happening at school, oh, you have nothing to complain about when I went to school, blah blah blah. So it's like compared to their story, and so again we only get 10% of like maybe the validation that we need. And so in order for us to sometimes give ourselves space to heal, to grow, to get to know ourselves, we have to expand, right? And that means shrinking maybe like that role or percentage that our parents take up in our minds or in our hearts or whatever that may be, right? And I hope that that made sense. Throughout the podcast, I recognize too that I use a lot of metaphors and some people have said that they enjoy them. So I hope you're one of those people. But yeah, when I usually speak or when I'm coaching and things like that, I get visuals. So I've learned to just speak them because it helps me get my point across. So I hope that you guys enjoy those metaphors that I throw in here and there. Sometimes what makes this journey hard too is like the lack of space for your own healing. So if your own healing requires you to go through periods of therapy or to go back through the memories to reconcile your story, for some families, they may not have the time bandwidth or emotional bandwidth to hold space for you in the way that is needed. And so that may come with miscommunication, or it may come with these comments that don't help you in your journey. There may be some stigmas around mental health or around therapy or around what you're doing. Comments like, you're spending too much time on that, you should just get over it. Therapy is for crazy people, right? And so Jazz shared a piece of that with us. So I want to play a clip of that.
Oh, you cannot tell any doctors that you're sad because van a decir que estás loca, te van a quitar los niños, and then all this stuff. So I have all of these like little voices in my head of like why I should never talk about my sadness.
Yeah.
Me telling my parents that I was going to therapy. I was always hesitant because I was like, I was scared of what they were going to say, not me actually going to therapy, but their opinion of me going to therapy.
How crazy, right? That in addition to you navigating your own mental health or your own healing and awakening journey and all that that can come with, you're also having to work through and kind of climb through or push through all of that other stuff that comes with it from those around us. But it makes me so proud that despite all of those hurdles, here we all are as guests and also you guys as listeners, learning about mental health, speaking about it, daring to ask for help or get the help that we need, even when it's hard, even when we are made to feel selfish. by the very people that we wish understood us the most. In case no one has told you, I just want to tell you that I am so proud of you, and that I hope that you continue to seek the healing that you need, that you don't give up on your journey, and that if one avenue doesn't work, that you seek another. And I hope that through this podcast, through continuing to speak about mental health and therapy and healing work, that it starts to unravel maybe the conditioning that you have or the negative connotation that you have around these types of things. I hope that it starts to bring down, as once we said in an episode, like the threshold, right? So if there was this huge gap between you and mental health and getting the help you need, I hope as you listen to these episodes, that threshold decreases in size and that fear decreases, and that you get to empower yourself, to go for whatever it is that you need in your own journey. All right. So as we are going through these journeys, it can feel like darkness sometimes, confusion. There's different things. It kind of gets muddy before it gets clear. And so the light at the end of the tunnel looks different for all of us. What we're searching for, what we're needing, the feeling that we're after is going to be different for all of us. And if we're anything alike, you'll likely always search for the next thing. You're gonna reach a point and be like, cool, now I'm ready for something better, something different. But regardless, I want to take a moment to again celebrate you for your wins, for the things that you have already gone through, or the light that you've already found. And I also want to celebrate the guests that we've had on and some of the wins that they have shared with us.
Little by little, like my friends and family, they kind of understand now, like he's on his own healing journey. Like Chris is MIA for a week. Like it's probably because he's on a trip somewhere or just wants alone time, and that's not weird anymore. Now I'm like, I'm unavailable, and it's totally understandable.
Now, by taking back my own power, taking back my voice, having boundaries, having self-respect, now I feel kind of like a superhero in the sense that nobody can affect me.
I feel the best I have ever felt in my 34 years.
I know that I'm healing because I don't get emotional talking about these things anymore. And I used to. I used to cry just talking about whatever topic I just mentioned today. Now that I'm not, it shows like a sign of healing. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
That turning point was when I like came out to my friends. I was able to like be myself around them because I felt safe with them. I felt like, I needed to tell them, and ever since then, that's when like things just started changing. It's been a big turning point with my healing journey.
Yay! Yes, yes, yes. I want to celebrate all of you guys. And qué bonita es la vida cuando pasan cosas bonitas. Last year, when I started to post on TikTok under the name FirstGen Healing, I posted not because I knew that there was an audience for a Latina content creator talking about healing and awakening, but really because I hoped that there would be. And I wanted to create like community around that. I truly think that that's what we are creating here. And so I wanted to share some wins that I feel like we've accomplished on the podcast, starting off with the fact that we have had 28 episodes so far, and this is the 29th. And 20 of those have been, like with unique guests. Most of them are also doing things in their own lives that are for first gens. Their kind of avenue of work or whatever it is that they're doing is geared towards that too, or they make sure that they include part of that into it. So that makes me feel so honored to have had them on and find them. It's been so cool too, like networking. So, maybe in 2020 when TikTok started, or when I got on that platform, I think it took about maybe a year where I started to see different Latina, Latino, Latina creators pop up. And so some of the people that I've had on are people that I followed for years and have admired, and I'm like rooting for them, and so it's been really cool to then meet them while having them on the podcast. And I also want to mention another win that we've had on the podcast so far, or something new, which is this year I had the first group episode. And in this episode, I have an amazing group of Latinas coming together to talk about self-love. Yay! Now, guys, I want to take a moment to say thank you all for tuning in from wherever you're from, because Based on the analytics that I see, we have listeners from the US, of course. The majority are from the US, but also from Mexico, Norway, Germany, Guatemala, Canada, Brazil, United Kingdom, Colombia, Iceland, Belgium, Poland, Chile, Israel, Netherlands, Hungary, Panama, Kuwait, India, Philippines, Singapore, Spain, and Italy. OMG. We have 350 subscribers as of now across all platforms. And depending on who you are, you may be like, oh, that's a little bit, or wow, that's a lot. For me, I am just celebrating that number because it obviously started with one listener, and that was me. Thank you to all 350 of you guys. And if you listen and you're not subscribed, aquí te va another reminder to please subscribe to let me know that y'all are here, y'all are listening. Now, in addition to that, we've also talked about so many topics that I'm so proud of, whether it was mental health, journaling, meditation, affirmation, self-love, self-care, manifesting, angel numbers, trusting the universe, anxiety, depression, going to therapy, the mother wound, healing your inner child, healing, becoming your authentic self, setting boundaries, rewriting our own American dream, all of these topics and so, so much more. It's beautiful that you guys get to hear from the mouths of other first gens, and not only that, but real life examples of it all, how it's played out, how it's been approached, how these tools are being used, or how certain things were managed. My hope is that hearing it from first gens helps you feel less intimidated by these topics. When I was on the awakening path, I heard this saying, which said, your vibe attracts your tribe. And when I first started my journey, I had no idea what my own vibe was, right? So I was like, how am I going to attract a tribe when I don't even have a vibe of my own? But of course, when you heal and you're awakened, then you start to shed parts of yourself that are no longer you, that you start to recognize like who you are versus like the parts of you that you took on because you had to for survival and all of that stuff. And although that's painful and it can require some grieving, it also makes room for who you truly are. And you begin to let go of perspectives that are not yours, stories, personality traits, habits, and cycles that no longer serve you. And you start to show up as your most authentic self, which is so beautiful. But the process of explaining that to others can sometimes be really hard. And I want to share a little video that I made that resonated with a lot of people. Es que lo que yo he estado haciendo es enfocarme en mí. Es como si yo fuera una cebolla y estoy pelando las capas para ver quién soy yo realmente. Ay, mija, qué cebolla ni qué 8 cuartos. Mejor apréndete a lavar la cola. Ay, ay, ay. When I started to show up as my true self, when I started to put out my vibe, without realizing it, I was calling in fellow empaths who were highly sensitive, Latinas, Latinos, Latines, who were on their healing and awakening journeys, and that maybe were eldest or eldest acting, high achieving, etc. And so it was kind of funny like to see that reflected back on the episodes, because as you guys may or may not know, most of the episodes are recorded the first time that I meet someone, like, virtually, but that's the first time that I'm actually speaking with them. And so as I record, I'm learning about their story just like you are for the first time. We don't like pre-plan what we're about to talk about or anything like that, at least for the episode that is about their journey. And so it was so funny to then like listen to their story, and at one point or another they would be like, I consider myself an empath, and inside I was like cracking up. I'm like, oh my god, similar humans, like I'm calling in similar humans. And so I started to see like your vibe really does attract your tribe.
I always say I'm a sensitive soul.
I've always felt like I've been an empathic kid. part of that I feel like is due to trauma, but part of that also is like I think there's been, inherent spiritual gifts like in my family.
And like I consider myself to be an empath. So like I realized that I was carrying other people's emotions and I was holding on to them. And I'm like, no, these are not for me to keep. These are not for me.
So if you're part of the empath gang, I'm gonna leave a poll. If you're listening through Spotify, let me know if you're part of the group, part of the empath people, because I know that can be a whole other journey of itself, finding out that you're an empath. So yeah, let me know. I would love to know how many of y'all are actually empaths too. One of those fellow empaths was Yasmin, aka ya.soul, who I found on TikTok. And if you don't follow her, you should. But as I got to know her virtually and then in person, we both realized that we are Latinas, content creators who are highly intuitive, highly empathetic souls, and that we're both passionate about healing, awakening, and mental health. So I want to shamelessly plug a project that we are working on now together, which is called the Hermanaship Podcast. It's a podcast where we talk soul shit. And I wanted to give you a little taste, just a little clip of what our most recent episode is like. So this one is called Chips and Chisme. Onto a chisme that's going to get me a little hot and bothered in the wrong ways. La Kendall y el Bad Bunny. Oh, Benito. No, Benito, no, Benito. And this is the hard part for when you're on this awakened journey, spirituality. If that sounds like your vibe, then I recommend that you check it out. All right. So to wrap up this beautiful episode, I want to read you guys some messages that you guys have actually sent in throughout the time of the podcast and that have kept me going, honestly. So let's take a look at some of the messages. Girl, that first episode almost had me in tears. You summed up my experience and identity issues in just that episode. That episode, that first introductory episode, which if you haven't listened, I think you should. It set the stage for this project. And I remember when I created it, I got, again, so emotional because I just felt how powerful it was. Because I don't know, I felt like everything I had lived through was kind of like being put in this moment, and I kind of felt like I knew that this was going to resonate with a lot of people. And that's not why I did it. I did it from my heart, but it kind of like felt that way. Like it felt like it was beyond me. And so I'm so glad that episode, kind of gave words to some of the things that you were feeling. It makes me happy. Someone else said, I learned something new in each episode and realized I'm not alone in the way that I feel. Again, you guys know a big part of this is I don't want you to feel alone. So I'm so thankful that episodes can make you feel not alone. I've listened to every episode of your podcast. I love what you are doing. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for telling me that it resonates and that, you understand what I'm trying to do here. The episode with your dad made me cry this morning. It resonated so much and reminded me of my father. When I created this project and as I started to do it, I asked my family members if they would be willing to be a part of it. And I'm so thankful that they have all said yes. And so far I've had just my dad on, but soon I'll have someone else. But yeah, I'm so glad that it resonated and that I hope that it inspires some of you guys. I did it in Spanish so that you guys could maybe it can mirror your home environment. I only speak Spanish with my dad. And so I hope that it inspires you guys to have these types of conversations with your parents because sometimes they'll surprise you, in how they respond. Someone else, I love your episodes. They resonate so much. Yeah, I'm so thankful. And then the last one that I'll share is your podcast makes me feel seen. Thank you for having such amazing and insightful interviews. I'm so thankful that my intention or what I put into it or what I hope you guys get out of it is exactly what you guys are getting out of it. De todo corazón, it all means a lot. And it's weird for me to come on here and talk to you guys in this way. Like, I feel like I need someone else's story to be highlighted. It's weird to like put myself here on the spotlight, right, and talk. But I just see it as, I think this goes beyond me, what I'm doing. I hope that that's seen, that I'm not on here like me. It's more like, let me share my story. Let me show my perspective. Let me share my, like, what I'm going through, or how I approach things, or how I see things, or the intention behind things, so that hopefully you guys see and feel like what this is all meant for, you know, and that it like remove some of those barriers that sometimes we feel between creators and the people that we listen to, you know. I hope it gives you some insight into like why I'm doing this. Now, I asked on Instagram for you guys to share what quotes you guys like to reference, because I always ask the guests that, right? And in the last episode, I played a clip of what quotes they mentioned. So you guys submitted a couple, and here are two of them. Get out of your comfort zone and do it scared, which is what I'm doing, y'all. And then one beast at a time. So basically, if you've heard like each new level has a new beast or something like that, which yes, I agree. Every life has its own challenges. No matter how perfect it looks or good or easy or whatever, there's always so many layers to people's lives. I'm gonna end this episode with the guests' messages to you guys. So aquí van. They're super special, so make sure you listen to them.
Don't be afraid in anything in life, whether it's therapy, whether it's getting a job. I know for me, when I started my corporate career, the fear that I had was networking and going to these events, feeling out of place, feeling like you connect more with the cleaning people than with your coworkers, was so real. But then when I look back, I'm like, man, like if you weren't afraid and you realize that you deserve to be there, then you probably could have gone a lot farther. So I think don't be afraid. And I know sometimes it feels like you're out of place, but you're meant to be there. So don't feel out of place.
Don't be afraid to shine brightly. It's just really easy for us to water ourselves down for a number of reasons, but for what? Like, that's what I've been asking myself. So don't be afraid to shine brightly.
Really take a look at what you're passionate about or what your heart desires, and start asking yourself, like, how can I move towards that goal? And what are some limiting beliefs or mindset blocks that I have around achieving that goal or moving towards that? Because it's until you identify what's holding you back that you will be able to like reflect on why you haven't maybe been able to take that step forward.
So honestly, guys, like, it's tough out there. You know, you're gonna have a lot of doubts every single day, but it's all in your head. So block those voices, get out there, take yourself on a self date, stay in your car, stay in your room, like just separate yourself from the world for even a minute, and it will make a big difference.
You're not alone, you know. Seek out our community. We're out there. We are starting to build a community on like throughout social media. Definitely don't be like in that mindset of, you know, not reaching out for help. Whether that's like therapy or finding a mentor or whatever it may be. And it's a journey.
Don't put added pressure to yourself to be perfect at it, because it's a journey to go through and learn. It's all a process, and you cannot be perfect at it.
Doing what makes you happy, you'll never go wrong with that.
Bueno, de la primera generación, que sí, que disculpen a los que llegamos por llegando a este país, que pues la verdad es un país desconocido para nosotros, y es por eso que le cargamos la mano a los niños, pero no lo hace uno porque es malo, lo hace uno porque quiere salir de los problemas que se le están presentando, right? Entonces por eso le carga uno la mano a los niños. Entonces pues mil disculpas por eso, pero espero que en vez de que se les sea un problema para ustedes, traten de verlo como una lección que pasó, pero soltarlo y seguir adelante.
Please make sure that you share this episode with anyone that you might think might find this helpful. I think that this could be a great first episode for someone so they can hear clips of the different ones and get a vibe or a feel for what it's about. I truly hope that you enjoyed this episode. And I just want to remind you that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself. Bye.